Hi, I'm Steve Green, Master Arborist with Greenview, and it's time to talk trees. I'm going to talk a little bit about not tree problems, but people problems when it comes to trees. In particular, I'm going to talk about plant blindness. The topic was suggested to me by that nice lady who looked at evergreens and thought everything's a pine. Plant blindness is a term that was introduced in the late 90s to refer to a particular sort of cognitive bias, the one whereby people can't tell the difference between plants. They take a look at a stand of timber like this and just tend to see one big green blur. This is a problem that unfortunately doesn't affect only lay people, but also many experts. Back in 2018, Douglas Belkin had an article in the Wall Street Journal lamenting how many university-trained botanists were struggling with plant ID. And the explanation was pretty simple. Most of the research money in plant science goes into molecular biology. So if you're looking at the molecular level of plants, you're not really seeing the big picture. Plant blindness can be a real problem because of how important basic plant knowledge is to those who manage our natural resources. The biggest landowners in the country is the federal government. A third of our land is owned by the Department of Forestry, Bureau of Land Management, national parks, and the military. In 2018, there was only one trained botanist to manage every 20 million acres of federally owned land. Now, I'm not going to make a pitch for you to become a trained botanist or even an arborist. I'm just going to try in my own humble little way here to make a contribution to corrective vision when it comes to looking at the plants around us. I'm not going to drag out a dichotomous tree ID key that walks us through the fine detail of how to identify trees. And that might be pretty technical and you'd quickly tune me out. So I'm going to start with something fairly homey and simple so that you can see it and say, oh yeah, I get it. On that note, let's take a look at this evergreen right here. So when we look at these needles, we see they grow individually along the stem, and we see how short they are. Not only are they short, but they're fairly stiff and they're sharp on the end. And when you rub one between your fingers, it has edges, or it's square. So there's our 4 S's: short, stiff, sharp, and square. That tells us we've got a spruce. All right, here we've got another evergreen. Let's take a look at these needles. We pull them off and we see, number one, they're not individual. They grow together in bundles, or fascicles as a botanist would call them. But there's a specific number of needles in each fascicle. If we count these, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We take another fascicle here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 needles in a bundle, W-H-I-T-E. It's a white pine. So long needles, feathery, 5 needles in a bundle, there's your white pine. Here we've got a tree that's clearly evergreen, but it doesn't have long or short pointy needles per se. When you look at the foliage on this tree, you can see it's quite different. These needles are built up of little individual scales. So in our area, a tree like that growing out in a wild area is probably going to be eastern red cedar. In the urban landscape, scaly needled evergreens are probably going to be arborvitae, or one of a number of varieties of junipers. Well, I hope that helped make the big green blur maybe a little more distinct and familiar, at least with respect to some of our evergreens. Plant ID and taxonomy are a fascinating subject. They'll make you feel more at home in your world, closer to the trees that surround you. And if you'd like some help identifying the trees in your landscape, you can contact me, Steve Green, or one of our other arborists here at Greenview. Other ways you might help correct your vision when it comes to plant blindness: visit the local arboretum or nature trail that has the trees tagged and ID'd for you. Begin to learn their bark texture, their crown habit, their branch structure. Or, and this is just a thought, visit us here at Greenview. Our garden center has a variety of evergreens. They're already tagged in the pot. The staff here would be happy to help you.